You ever watch someone screenshot another person's entire career, slap their name on it, and post it on LinkedIn like they just invented gravity? 400 likes, comments full of fire emojis, and the person who actually built the thing is sitting 3 cubicles away, watching it happen in real time. This one is about a pharmaceutical distributor, 40 vendors, and a man who claimed credit for a system he could not explain if his life depended on it. Turns out his career did. Stay to the end for my take, and I want to see yours in the comments. I can tell you the exact temperature at which insulin becomes poison. Not in a dramatic way. In the way you know your own phone number way. 2 to 8 degrees Celsius. That's the window. 1 degree above, and you've got a vial of expensive water. 1 degree below, the crystalline structures fractures, and nobody's going to catch it until a patient does not respond to their dose. I have spent 9 years making sure that never happens. My name is Laura Oliveira, and I am the Cold Chain Compliance Coordinator for MedStar Regional Distribution out of Memphis. We service 214 hospitals, clinics, and pharmacy chains across 7 southeastern states. Biologics, vaccines, insulin, oncology drugs, anything that needs to stay cold from the moment it leaves the manufacturer to the moment it hits a patient's arm. That is my job. The chain of custody between life and shelf-stable garbage. 40 vendors, not warehouse companies or fulfillment centers, specialized pharmaceutical cold chain carriers, each one with a different fleet configuration, different refrigeration technology, different regional coverage. I negotiated every single contract face-to-face over 9 years. Custom service level agreements tailored to each carrier's capabilities. Every one of those contracts has the same 5 words buried in the compliance addendum. Per standing arrangement with L. Oliveira. That clause is not decorative. It means the temperature monitoring protocols, the excursion reporting thresholds, the emergency rerouting procedures. All of it was negotiated between me and the operations director at each carrier, personally. They do not have a relationship with MedStar. They have a relationship with me. I keep a spreadsheet I call the Cold Bible. Every vendor's quirks, contact preferences, the name of the dispatcher's dog if it means my Friday evening call gets answered. My manager once asked why I did not upload it to the shared drive. I told him it would not make sense to anyone else. He laughed. He thought I was being modest. My office smells like coffee, and the faint chemical sweetness of the packaging materials warehouse 1 floor down. I have a cactus named Gerald on my desk. Gerald has survived 3 office moves and 1 earthquake scare. I figure if Gerald can make it, so can I. That was the year Garrett Lusk showed up. He walked past my desk on his first day, trailing the VP of Operations, his uncle Don Lusk, and I watched Don gesture toward the logistics floor like a real estate agent showing a property. Garrett did not look at me, did not look at any of us. He was scrolling his phone, nodding at intervals that had nothing to do with what Don was saying. His title was Director of Supply Chain Innovation. I had never heard of it because it had not existed until the week before. His LinkedIn said, Serial Entrepreneur. His last venture was a direct-to-consumer supplement company called Vital Edge that had burned through its seed round in 11 months. I know because one of our carriers looked him up and texted me a screenshot with no comment, except a single question mark. Garrett's first all hands was 2 weeks in. He stood at the front of the conference room in a quarter zip that probably cost more than my monthly car payment, and he said something I will never forget. I have been mapping the vendor ecosystem, and what I see is a fulfillment pipeline that has not been optimized in a decade. We are going to right-size the vendor footprint, eliminate redundancy, and build a logistics synergy framework that puts us 5 years ahead. I looked at my colleague Dana. Dana looked at the ceiling. Right-size the vendor footprint. I had spent 9 years building that footprint carrier by carrier, matching each vendor's refrigeration specs to specific drug categories. There is no redundancy. There is specificity. But that is a word that lives at ground level. And Garrett had announced he preferred altitude. The first incident felt small enough to ignore. Garrett scheduled a meeting with 3 of my top-tier carriers, the ones handling our oncology biologics, without telling me. I found out when one of them called me directly, confused, asking why the new guy wanted to renegotiate terms we had finalized 8 months ago. I walked into Garrett's office and explained that those contracts had custom excursion thresholds tied to the specific drugs they transported. He leaned back in his chair. Laura, I appreciate the institutional knowledge, but we are past the phase where one person owns a vendor relationship. That is a single point of failure. I am the single point of failure. That is what he just said. I am the failure. I told him the contracts reference me by name. He blinked. We will update the language, he said. Like contracts are Google Docs. The second incident was the LinkedIn post. I was eating lunch at my desk when Dana sent me a link without a word. I clicked it and saw my vendor routing framework. The entire matrix I had built over 3 years, mapping carrier capabilities to regional drug distribution patterns, copy-pasted into a LinkedIn article under Garrett's name. Supply Chain 3.0, How I Am Redesigning Pharmaceutical Logistics for the Modern Era. 412 likes, 47 comments. People I had never met congratulating him on his vision. He had not changed a single data point, not one. He had reformatted it into a slide graphic and added the word ecosystem 4 times. But the numbers were mine. The routing logic was mine. The carrier assignments were mine. He got one number wrong. In the framework, the acceptable temperature excursion window for insulin transit is plus or minus 0.5 degrees from the 2 to 8 range. Garrett's post said plus or minus 2 degrees. That is not a rounding error. That is the difference between a viable shipment and a parking lot full of medical waste. I brought it up in the next team meeting. Calmly, specifically. I said the excursion threshold in the published framework was incorrect, and that if any carrier adjusted their protocols based on that number, we would lose shipments. Garrett smiled at me the way you smile at someone's grandmother when she tries to use the TV remote. Laura, I think you are getting lost in the weeds here. Leadership needs altitude, not granularity. The point of the framework is directional, not operational. Dana's pen stopped moving. Our junior analyst, Kyle, studied his laptop screen like it contained the secrets of the universe. The direction of insulin at plus or minus 2 degrees is the trash, I said. Nobody laughed. Garrett's smile tightened. Let us take this offline, he said, which is corporate for, you just embarrassed me and I will not forget it. He did not forget it. Over the next 3 weeks, he reassigned my vendor relationships to Kyle, who had been with the company for 7 months and had never negotiated a contract in his life. He removed me from the quarterly pharmaceutical compliance review, a review I had designed and run for 6 years. He moved my office from the logistics floor to a converted storage room near receiving, next to a humming HVAC unit that made every phone call sound like I was inside a seashell. The final insult was not the firing itself, it was the delivery. I found out in Slack, the supply chain team channel, 9:47 on a Tuesday morning. Garrett posted a message announcing a team restructuring to support the innovation roadmap and listed my position as eliminated. 17 people saw it before I did. Dana called me from the bathroom, whispering. By the time HR scheduled the actual meeting, 3 hours later, everyone on my floor already knew. The HR coordinator read from a script about evolving organizational needs and strategic realignment. Garrett sat in the corner of the room, scrolling his phone. The same phone, the same scrolling. Same as day one. I nodded. I said, I understand. I thanked the HR coordinator for her time. Garrett looked up, briefly surprised. He had prepared for an argument. I could see it in the way his shoulders were set, the way the door was propped open, easy exit if things got emotional. I was not emotional. I was doing math. I went back to my storage room office, packed Gerald into my bag, saved my personal contact files to a thumb drive, my contacts, my notes, my relationships, and walked through the logistics floor one last time. Dana caught my eye from across the room. I winked. The parking lot was hot in that Memphis way where the asphalt feels personal. I sat in my car for 1 minute. Exactly one. Then I drove home, poured a glass of wine that was too large for a Tuesday, and called my sister. So she is out, walked right through the front door with a cactus in her bag and 9 years of vendor relationships on a thumb drive. And the man who just fired her has his name on a LinkedIn post claiming he built the system she's taking with her. If you're not subscribed, fix that now, because what happens next is a masterclass in finding out. The first call came 11 days later. Kyle, the junior analyst who had inherited my vendor relationships, called me on my personal cell. His voice sounded like a man who had just discovered that the ocean has a bottom, and he was at it. Laura, I am calling 3 carriers, and none of them are returning my calls. The contract says to contact the relationship manager for excursion disputes, and they are saying that is you. I was repotting Gerald at the time. New soil, bigger pot. The old one was getting cramped. Kyle, I do not work there anymore. I know, but can you tell me what the rerouting protocol is for Region 4? The system does not have it. It is not in the system, Kyle. It is a standing arrangement. Silence. I could hear Garrett's voice in the background. Something about cascading deliverables. I told Kyle I wished him luck and hung up. That was week 2. By week 4, Dana sent me a text. 3 carriers had formally declined to renew their contracts. Not renegotiate, declined. The agreements referenced me by name, and without my sign-off on the compliance addendum, the carrier's legal teams would not authorize continuation. MedStar's procurement department was baffled. They had never seen a vendor refuse to do business with a willing buyer. They had also never seen what a vendor relationship looks like when it is built on trust instead of purchase orders. Those are different things. By week 6, it got worse. A temperature excursion hit a shipment of insulin, $4.2 million worth, because the replacement carrier Garrett brought in was using the plus or minus 2-degree threshold from his LinkedIn post. The same wrong number. The same wrong number I corrected in that meeting. The same number he told me was directional. Directed $4.2 million straight to the medical waste incinerator. I learned this from an industry contact who called me laughing in a way that was not entirely kind. The pharmaceutical logistics world is small, and news of a spoiled insulin shipment travels faster than the insulin did. I was making jambalaya when that call came in. My sister's recipe. I had been sleeping 9 hours a night for the first time in a decade, reading novels that had nothing to do with temperature variance, and learning that I am genuinely terrible at gardening despite my commitment to Gerald. One evening, Dana called. She said Garrett had asked her, casually in the hallway like it was nothing, whether she had Laura's vendor contact list. My stomach dropped. Dana said she told him she did not have it, which was true. But then she said Kyle had been going through my old desk in the storage room and had found a printed sheet with carrier names on it. I held my breath. The sheet was an old holiday card list. Just names, no contract details, no protocols, no relationship notes. Useless. He looked so hopeful when he found it, Dana said. I exhaled. By week 8, the hemorrhage was public. 7 more carriers had declined renewals. MedStar's on-time delivery rate for temperature-sensitive pharmaceuticals had dropped from 99.2% to 71%. 2 hospital systems had filed formal complaints. The Regional Pharmaceutical Board had opened a preliminary inquiry. Garrett held a town hall. He called it a recalibration summit. Dana sent me a partial transcript. He used the word ecosystem 11 times. The call came from a name I recognized, Mary Beth Kessler, CEO of Consolidated Health Logistics, MedStar's largest regional competitor. Laura, I have been watching your old company bleed carriers for 2 months, and I think we both know why. I want to offer you VP of Cold Chain Operations. Full authority. Build your program from scratch. I said yes before she finished the sentence. Within 30 days of my start, I reached out to my vendors. Not MedStar's vendors. Mine. 31 of the 40 carriers signed with Consolidated within 60 days. They were not poached. They were not bribed. They returned my calls because they had always returned my calls. MedStar's general counsel sent a cease and desist letter alleging vendor solicitation. Consolidated's legal team responded with copies of the original contracts, every one containing per standing arrangement with L. Oliveira, and a polite note explaining that the relationships were, by MedStar's own contractual language, personally bound. That is when the reframe hit. See, what nobody at MedStar understood, what Garrett could not possibly have understood, was that those 5 words in the compliance addendum were not just relationship language. They were a regulatory artifact. The pharmaceutical cold chain carriers operate under FDA 21 CFR, Part 211 guidelines, and the custom excursion thresholds in each contract were validated specifically against my compliance documentation. When I left, Those validated thresholds left with me. MedStar was not just losing vendors. They were losing their regulatory standing to distribute temperature-sensitive pharmaceuticals in 7 states. The LinkedIn post was the accelerant. When the vendor breach dispute went to mediation, Garrett's Supply Chain 3.0 article was entered as evidence. He had publicly claimed authorship of the logistics framework, the same framework whose incorrect temperature threshold directly caused the $4.2 million spoiled shipment. His name was on the post. His face was on the post. 412 people had liked the post. His attorney's face in that mediation room was something I will carry with me for a long time. I sat across the table from Garrett for the first time since the Slack message. He was wearing the same quarter zip. I walked through every contract, every vendor relationship, every compliance threshold he had overridden, in language so specific he could not even pretend to follow along. I explained in plain terms that the excursion threshold he published had resulted in spoiled medication that was destined for patients. I said it once. I did not raise my voice. Garrett tried to pivot. This was always a team effort, he said. The innovation roadmap was about building systems that scale beyond individual contributors. Mary Beth, sitting next to me, leaned over and whispered, "He is still doing it." The mediator asked Garrett to explain the difference between the 2 excursion thresholds. He could not. Garrett was terminated the following week, named personally in the vendor breach lawsuit. His uncle Don took early retirement 3 months later, after the board discovered the Director of Supply Chain Innovation title had been created without authorization. The LinkedIn post is still up. The comments are different now. I run cold chain operations at Consolidated from a corner office that smells like new carpet instead of HVAC. Gerald is on my desk. Bigger pot. Thriving. MedStar lost its preferred distributor status with 2 major hospital networks and is currently negotiating a reduced service territory. They hired a consulting firm to rebuild their vendor relationships. The consulting firm called me for advice. I declined. Some people think I should have answered Kyle's call that day. Walked him through the rerouting protocol for Region 4. Save the shipment, save the patients, save the headache, and maybe they are right. That question keeps me up sometimes. Not often, but sometimes. I think about the nurses who opened those insulin coolers and found nothing usable, and I do not feel triumphant. I feel the weight of what I always felt, that the chain matters. But I also know that I told them, in a meeting, in front of witnesses, with specific numbers. I told them the threshold was wrong, and I was told I was lost in the weeds. I am building a cold chain training certification program at Consolidated now. When it launches, every coordinator will learn to document their vendor relationships in a system that does not walk out the door with them. I am building the thing that makes sure no one has to be me. Gerald has a new leaf. Well, here's my take. What kills me about this one is the LinkedIn post. The absolute confidence of copy-pasting someone else's work, getting one critical number wrong, and then 400 people clapping for you. That's the whole problem with corporate America in one screenshot. Nobody checked. Nobody asked, hey, did you actually build this? They just saw the title, saw the quarter zip, and hit the like button. And then that same post, that vanity project, became the legal document that ended his career. He built his own trap and 400 people helped him set it. That's not karma, that's architecture. So here's what I want to know. That phone call from Kyle 11 days in, should she have helped? Not for Garrett, but for the company, but for the patients at the end of that chain. Tell me what you would have done in the comments, because I genuinely think this one splits right down the middle. Next video is on the screen. Tap it. And if you're not subscribed, you're missing these new videos.